On being modern-minded. Our age is the most parochial since Homer. I speak not of any geographical parish. The inhabitants of Mudcombe-in-the-Mere are more aware than at any former time of what is being done and thought at Praha, at Gorky, or at Peiping. It is in the chronological sense that we are parochial, as the new names conceal the historic cities of Prague, Nizhny Novgorod, and Pekin. So new catchwords hide from us the thoughts and feelings of our ancestors, even when they differed little from our own. We imagine ourselves at the apex of intelligence, and cannot believe that the quaint clothes and cumbrous phrases of former times can have invested people in thoughts that are still worthy of our attention. If Hamlet is to be interesting to a really modern reader, it must first be translated into the language of Marx or of Freud, or better still, into a jargon inconsistently compounded of both. I read some years ago a contemptuous review of a book by Santayana, mentioning an essay on Hamlet, dated in every sense 1908, as if what had been discovered since then made any earlier appreciation of Shakespeare irrelevant and comparatively superficial. It did not occur to the reviewer that his review was dated in every sense 1936, or perhaps this thought did occur to him and filled him with satisfaction. He was writing for the moment, not for all time. Next year he will have adopted the new fashion in opinions, whatever it may be, and he no doubt hopes to remain up to date as long as he continues to write. Any other ideal for a writer would seem absurd and old-fashioned to the modern-minded man. The desire to be contemporary is of course new, only in degree. It has existed to some extent in all previous periods that believed themselves to be progressive. The Renaissance had a contempt for the Gothic centuries that had preceded it. The 17th and 18th centuries covered priceless mosaics with whitewash. The Romantic movement despised the age of the heroic couplet. 80 years ago, Lecky reproached my mother for being led by intellectual fashion to oppose fox hunting. "I am sure," he wrote, "you are not really at all sentimental about foxes or at all shocked at the prettiest of all the assertions of women's rights, riding across country. But you always look upon politics and intellect as a fierce race, and are so dreadfully afraid of not being sufficiently advanced or intellectual." But in none of these former times was the contempt for the past nearly as complete as it is now. From the Renaissance to the end of the 18th century, men admired Roman antiquity. The Romantic movement revived the Middle Ages. My mother, for all her belief in 19th century progress, constantly read Shakespeare and Milton. It is only since the 1914-18 war that it has been fashionable to ignore the past en bloc. The belief that fashion alone should dominate opinion has great advantages. It makes thought unnecessary and puts the highest intelligence within the reach of everyone. It is not difficult to learn the correct use of such words as complex, sadism, Oedipus, bourgeois, deviation, left, and nothing more is needed to make a brilliant writer or talker. Some, at least, of such words represented much thought on the part of their inventors. Like paper money, they were originally convertible into gold. But they have become, for most people, inconvertible, and in depreciating have increased nominal wealth in ideas. And so we are enabled to despise the paltry intellectual fortunes of former times. The modern-minded man, although he believes profoundly in the wisdom of his period, must be presumed to be very modest about his personal powers. His highest hope is to think first what is about to be thought, to say what is about to be said, and to feel what is about to be felt. He has no wish to think better thoughts than his neighbors, to say things showing more insight, or to have emotions which are not those of some fashionable group, but only to be slightly ahead of others in point of time. Quite deliberately, he suppresses what is individual in himself for the sake of the admiration of the herd. A mentally solitary life, such as that of Copernicus or Spinoza or Milton after the Restoration, seems pointless according to modern standards. Copernicus should have delayed his advocacy of the Copernican system until it could be made fashionable, Spinoza should have been either a good Jew or a good Christian. Milton should have moved with the times, like Cromwell's widow, who asked Charles II for a pension on the ground that she did not agree with her husband's politics. Why should an individual set himself up as an independent judge? Is it not clear that wisdom resides in the blood of the Nordic race, or, alternatively, in the proletariat? And in any case, what is the use of an eccentric opinion, which never can hope to conquer the great agencies of publicity? The money rewards and widespread, though ephemeral fame, which those agencies have made possible, place temptations in the way of able men, which are difficult to resist. To be pointed out, admired, mentioned constantly in the press, and offered easy ways of earning much money is highly agreeable. And when all this is open to a man, he finds it difficult to go on doing the work that he himself thinks best, and is inclined to subordinate his judgment to the general opinion. Various other factors contribute to this result. One of these is the rapidity of progress, which has made it difficult to do work which will not soon be superseded. Newton lasted till Einstein. Einstein is already regarded by many as antiquated. Hardly any man of science nowadays sits down to write a great work, because he knows that while he is writing, others will discover new things that will make it obsolete before it appears. The emotional tone of the world changes with equal rapidity, as wars, depressions, and revolutions chase each other across the stage. And public events impinge upon private lives more forcibly than in former days. Spinoza, in spite of his heretical opinions, could continue to sell spectacles and meditate, even when his country was invaded by foreign enemies. If he had lived now, he would, in all likelihood, have been conscripted or put in prison. For these reasons, a greater energy of personal conviction is required to lead a man to stand out against the current of his time than would have been necessary in any previous period since the Renaissance. The change has, however, a deeper cause. In former days, men wished to serve God. When Milton wanted to exercise that one talent which is death to hide, he felt that his soul was bent to serve therewith my Maker. Every religiously minded artist was convinced that God's aesthetic judgments coincided with his own. He had therefore a reason, independent of popular applause, for doing what he considered his best, even if his style was out of fashion. The man of science, in pursuing truth, even if he came into conflict with current superstition, was still setting forth the wonders of creation and bringing men's imperfect beliefs more neatly into harmony with God's perfect knowledge. Every serious worker, whether artist, philosopher, or astronomer, believed that, in following his own convictions, he was serving God's purposes. When, with the progress of enlightenment, this belief began to grow dim, there still remained the true, the good, and the beautiful. Non-human standards were still laid up in heaven, even if heaven had no topographical existence. Throughout the 19th century, the true, the good, and the beautiful preserved their precarious existence in the minds of earnest atheists. But their very earnestness was their undoing, since it made it impossible for them to stop at a halfway house. Pragmatists explained that truth is what it pays to believe. Historians of morals reduced the good to a matter of tribal custom. Beauty was abolished by the artists in a revolt against the sugary insipidities of a Philistine epoch and in a mood of fury in which satisfaction is to be derived only from what hurts. And so the world was swept clear not only of God as a person, but of God's essence as an ideal to which man owed an ideal allegiance, while the individual, as a result of a crude and uncritical interpretation of sound doctrines, was left without any inner defense against social pressure. All movements go too far, and this is certainly true of the movement toward subjectivity, which began with Luther and Descartes as an assertion of the individual and has culminated by an inherent logic in his complete subjection. The subjectivity of truth is a hasty doctrine, not validly deducible from the premises which have been thought to imply it. And the habits of centuries have made many things seem dependent upon theological belief, which in fact are not so. Men lived with one kind of illusion, and when they lost it, they fell into another. But it is not by old error that new error can be combated. Detachment and objectivity, both in thought and in feeling, have been historically, but not logically associated with certain traditional beliefs. To preserve them without these beliefs is both possible and important. A certain degree of isolation, both in space and time, is essential to generate the independence required for the most important work. There must be something which is felt to be of more importance than the admiration of the contemporary crowd. We are suffering not from the decay of theological beliefs, but from the loss of solitude.